sales minus variable cost minus fixed cost, right? What is that sales minus variable cost?
Contribution.
Contribution. What is fixed cost plus profit?
Contribution.
Contribution. And one more thing, one more method we can find out the contribution. Do you know if PV ratio is given? What is that PV ratio all about? PV ratio equals
Contribution by sales into 100.
contribution by sales into 100. So if PV ratio and sales data is given, how to find out contribution?
PV ratio into sales by 100.
100 ഒഴിവാക്കിക്കോ. Don't think about 100. PV ratio itself is a percentage. So contribution
ratio.
can be found out by sales into
PV ratio.
PV ratio. Why I told this? Because all these formulas are interrelated. And today we'll be having a look on this break-even analysis. So before that, tell me what is that break-even point?
No profit, no loss.
No loss, no profit.
The point where the company is not making profit or loss. It is a point. Our point കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ടാണ് the company will start to make what?
Profit.
Profit. Okay. So fundamentally it is known as when the volume of output equals total cost, it is known as break-even point. What is that volume of output?
Sales.
That means technically break-even point is a point where our sales volume is equal to the total cost of the company. What is that total cost? What are the two costs?
Variable and fixed.
Fixed and variable cost. When fixed cost and variable cost is equal to sales, that point is known as break-even point. Now let us see how we are actually using the formula to find out break-even point. So before that, let me ask you, what are the factors which affect break-even point? Or in other words, what are the factors which affect the sale of a company? What is that analysis called?
CV. Cost volume profit.
Cost volume profit analysis. That means we are finding out the relationship between cost of production, volume of production, and profit of that product. So out of that, the first tool of CVP analysis was PV ratio. And the second tool, now what we are learning, what is that? Break-even analysis. So under this cost volume profit analysis, we are trying to find out what is the relationship between cost of production, volume of production, and profit of the product using two tools, that is PV ratio and break-even analysis. Now we are going to see what are the formulas available to calculate break-even point. First of all, break-even point can be found out in two ways. That is break-even point in units and break-even point in rupees. What do you mean by break-even point in units? In simple terms, എത്ര യൂണിറ്റ് പ്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്താലാണ് the company is going to have its what? എത്ര യൂണിറ്റ് ഒരു കമ്പനി പ്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്താലാണ് the company is having a situation where there is no profit or
No loss.
no loss. കമ്പനിക്ക് ഒരു ബ്രേക്ക് ഈവൻ പോയിന്റ് എത്തണമെങ്കിൽ എത്ര യൂണിറ്റ് പ്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്യണം? എത്ര യൂണിറ്റ് പ്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്താലാണ് the company is going to earn no profit or loss? So that is why we are finding out the break even point in units. How many units will be produced? So the formula is like total fixed cost divided by contribution per unit. Please take note down these things. Total fixed cost divided by contribution per unit. For example, if I tell you the total fixed cost is 25,000 and contribution per unit is 2.5 rupees. So what is the break even point in units? Or let it be 25. Contribution per unit, let it be 25. 1000 units. What does that mean? 1000 unit produce ചെയ്യുന്നത് വരെ 999 യൂണിറ്റ് പ്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്താൽ പ്രോഫിറ്റ് ആയിരിക്കുമോ ലോസ് ആയിരിക്കുമോ? 1000 is the break even point. So in that case, if the company is producing 999 units, is it profit or loss? Staying in profit or loss?
Loss.
ആയിരിക്കത്തില്ലേ?
അത് ലോസ് ആയിരിക്കും. What is the reason? Because that unit is below the
Breakeven point.
break-even point. If they are producing 1001, 1001 unit produce ചെയ്താൽ
Profit.
they start to make profit. So
Profit.
that ways we are finding out how many units are required to reach that break-even point. And if we want to convert that break-even point into rupees, simply use this fixed cost divided by contribution into sales. What is this contribution and sales? What is this relationship called? It is otherwise known as what?
PV ratio.
PV ratio. Total fixed cost divided by PV ratio, you will be getting break-even point in rupees. So let me tell you an example. If the total fixed cost is 20,000 and the PV ratio is 20%, what is the break-even point in rupees? 20,000 divided by 20%. How can we do this? 20,000 divided by 20 by 100. How to find out? 20,000 എങ്ങനെ കിട്ടി 20,000? ഈ 20 by 100 അങ്ങോട്ടേക്ക് എടുക്കുമ്പോൾ what happens? 20,000 into dash by dash. 20,000 into 20 by 100 ആണോ 20,000 into 100 by 20 ആണോ?
100 by 20.
100 by 20. Likewise you can
1 lakh.
it is 1 lakh.
1 lakh.
1 lakh. എനിക്കും 1 lakh കിട്ടി.
1 lakh. അപ്പൊ അങ്ങനെ അപ്പൊ നമുക്ക് ഇതിൽ മനസ്സിലാക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്നത് വാട്ട് ഇസ് ദാറ്റ് 1 lakh rupees? 1 ലക്ഷത്തിന്റെ സെയിൽ നടത്തുമ്പോഴാണ് ബ്രേക്ക് ഈവൻ പോയിന്റിലേക്ക് എത്തുന്നത്. ഇഫ് ദ സെയിൽ ഇസ് 99,000, വാട്ട് ഹാപ്പൻസ്?
On loss.
Company is making loss. If it is 1,10,000, company has already started making
Profit.
So these are the three formulas that you should not forget when it comes to break even point. So apart from that, I have to give you some tips. Whether you want to compute this break even point, two things are mandatory that you need to find out. അതില്ലാതെ ഇതിലേക്ക് എത്താൻ പറ്റില്ല. What are those two ഒഴിച്ചുകൂടാൻ പറ്റാത്ത സംഗതി if you want to compute break even point?
Fixed cost.
Contribution and
Fixed cost.
Fixed cost will be given in the question itself. I'm talking about other things that you need to compute. Prerequisite. When you are asked to find out this break even point, you have to find out contribution and PV ratio also. Without this, you cannot find out what? Break even point. We have seen the uses of PV ratio, right? What was the use of PV ratio? It helps to, it indicates the profitability. It helps in comparison. Then it helps to calculate what we are learning now. What is
Breakeven.
Break even point. Without contribution and PV ratio, we cannot find out break even point. Shall we do some problems? Fixed cost divided by contribution or fixed cost divided by PV ratio. These are the formulas. We'll do a couple of problems now. Shall we? Yes?
Yes.
or no? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So these are the data given. Fixed cost, selling price and variable cost. You need to find out break even points in units and rupees. So before jumping into break even point, you need to find out two mandatory items. What is that?
Contribution.
Contribution and
PV ratio.
PV ratio. What is the contribution? Which formula you can apply?
Selling.
Sales minus variable cost alle.
Yes.
In this case, sales and variable cost, is it the total or per unit it is given?
Per unit.
Both of them are given in per unit, right?
Per unit.
So use that. What is the selling price? 12 minus variable cost?
9.
9. Contribution per unit?
3.
3 rupees. So after getting contribution, you can find out PV ratio. What is PV ratio? Contribution by
What a guru.
eh?
Into 100 ചെയ്യണ്ടോ?
ചെയ്യണം.
4 lakh വരുമോ?
ഒന്ന് നോക്കിക്കേ. PV ratio, contribution by sales into 100. What is the contribution?
Okay, contribution. Okay, 3 divided by
3 divided by
5 into.
what is the sales? Sales പറഞ്ഞാൽ either it can be total sales or individual per unit sales. Anything that is okay according to the question.
80,000.
PV ratio, contribution by sales into 100. Contribution 3 rupees. Sales how much?
25 ആണോ?
25% അല്ലേ? Selling price എത്രയാ?
12.
12 into 100. How much is that?
25.
25%. As of now, we have found out the PV ratio. Now we can find out the break-even point. So first one, break-even point in units. How to find out that?
12,000 divided by
Total fixed cost divided by
Contribution.
per unit.
contribution per unit. So what is the fixed cost?
12,000.
12,000.
12,000 divided by
4,000 വരും.
how much?
3.
3.
4,000
4,000 rupees or units?
units.
This means that the company has to produce 4,000 units in order to reach their break-even point. Anything below 4,000 units, they will be making loss. Anything above 4,000 units, they will be making profit. And what is the next one? BEP in rupees. What is the formula that you can use? Because you know the PV ratio also now. So
Yes. 4,000
total fixed cost divided by
contribution.
P-
PV ratio.
PV ratio.
yes. Tell me.
12,000 divided by
Hmm.
25.
25%.
48,000.
48,000 രൂപ.
അതെ.
What was the next formula to compute break-even point in rupees? Just we can cross-check. Total fixed cost
Divided
divided
by
by
contribution
contribution
into selling price.
sales or selling price. So 12,000 divided by contribution how much?
3.
Sales how much?
12.
48,000.
48,000.
48,000.
Right?
Yes.
So the company has to achieve minimum of 48,000 rupees worth rupees sales in order to reach its break-even point. So if the sales value, if it is lesser than 48,000, it will be making loss. If it is higher than 48,000, company will be making
Profit.
profit. This is the BEP. Shall we continue to next problem?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So in this question, the difference between the previous question and this question is nothing but in the previous question, it was given like per unit details. ഇവിടെ per unit എന്തെങ്കിലും തന്നിട്ടുണ്ടോ? ഒരു യൂണിറ്റിന്റെ ഇല്ലല്ലോ. Yes or no?
No, no.
So can
No.
you find out break-even point in units in this case? You cannot find out. It's as simple as that. Because total units in a പറ്റിയോ അങ്ങനെ ഒന്നും പറയുന്നില്ല. They have given only the total value of fixed cost, sales and variable cost. So in this case, you will be able to find out only the break-even point in rupees. So before jumping to break-even point, the mandatory items. First one, what is that?
Contribution.
Contribution. Sales minus variable cost. How much?
80,000 minus 40,000. 40,000.
Minus 40,000. 40,000 is the contribution.
Contribution.
Second one, you have to find out
PV ratio.
PV ratio. Easy. How?
Contribution by sales into 100.
into 100. Tell me. 40,000 is the contribution. Sales how much?
80. 80,000.
80,000 into 100. How much?
50%.
50% is the PV ratio. Now you can find out BEP. How? Total fixed cost divided by
PV ratio.
PV ratio. Total fixed cost how much?
20,000.
20,000 divided by PV ratio 50%. How much is that?
40,000.
Rupees 40,000. How did you get that?
20,000
20,000 into 100 by
into 100 divided by 50.
50. 40,000 rupees. Any doubts? Please ask. The prerequisite to compute break-even point is you have to find out the contribution as well as PV ratio. That you have to you should remember. Shall we move? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And this is another variant of question. That is the sales variable cost and fixed cost is given. You have to find out the break-even point for 4 cases. First one, second one, third one, and fourth one. These are the 4 cases you have to find out break-even point. So what are the factors affecting the break-even point? 3 factors. What are those 3
Cost,
factors?
volume, profit.
From this data, what are the factors affecting break-even point?
Sales,
Variable cost and
sales cost and fixed cost.
fixed cost. ഈ 3 സംഗതിയിലും വരുന്ന മാറ്റം will be reflected in the break-even point. While doing the calculation, you will get to know that. So first one, simply they are asking the break-even point if the data are like this. ഈ ഒരു data and break-even point you need to find out first. So before finding the break-even point, so take the first case. What is the thing that you have to find out first? Contribution. Or we can directly find out PV ratio. That is more than enough. What is the PV ratio? Contribution by sales into 100. Yes. Tell me. How to find out contribution? PV ratio contribution already we are computing, right?
Yes.
How to find out contribution?
Sales minus variable
Sales
cost.
minus variable cost. That means sales volume is
2 lakh.
2 lakh minus variable cost
1,20,000.
1,20,000 divided by sales how much?
2 lakh.
Into 100. So 2 lakh minus 1,20,000, 80,000 divided by 2 lakh into 100. Yes, tell me.
40.
40%, right?
Yes.
Everyone got 40% in the first case PV ratio. Now the next step is to find out the break-even point directly. How to find out break-even point?
Total fixed cost by
Total
PV
fixed
ratio.
cost divided by PV ratio. How much?
30,000 divided by 40%.
Yes.
₹75,000.
Rupees 75,000. Rupees 75,000. So this is about the first case. Now when you are moving to the second case, what they are asking, BEP, what is the break-even point if selling price is reduced by 10%? So what you have to do?
Sales minus 10% of sales.
ഈ 4 കേസിലും നമ്മൾ we need to find out the PV ratio, right? നമ്മൾ ബ്രേക്ക് ഈവൻ പോയിന്റ് കാണുമ്പോൾ എന്തായാലും പി വി റേഷ്യോ കാണണമല്ലോ. ആ കാണുന്ന പി വി റേഷ്യോയിൽ വരുന്ന വ്യത്യാസങ്ങളാണ് ഇവിടെ കൊടുക്കുന്നത്. ദ ഫസ്റ്റ് വൺ ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് സെല്ലിംഗ് പ്രൈസ് ഇസ് റിഡ്യൂസ്ഡ് ബൈ 10%. So second case we are going to find out once again the PV ratio, that is contribution by sales into 100. What is that contribution? Sales minus variable cost divided by sales. Let it be sales minus variable cost contribution. So what is the condition? If the selling price is reduced by 10%, so what is the contribution? What is the contribution? What will be the sales volume?
Sales 1,80,000.
Sales 1,80,000 ആയിട്ട് കുറയുന്നു. What is the reason? 2 lakh into 10 by 100 is how much?
20,000.
20,000 will be reduced from selling price. That is why we are getting 1,80,000. Minus variable cost എന്തെങ്കിലും ചേഞ്ച് പറയുന്നുണ്ടോ സെക്കൻഡ് കേസിൽ?
No.
So 1,80,000 minus 1,20,000 would be the contribution divided by how to find out PV ratio? Sales volume, what is that? Second case 1,80,000 തന്നെയല്ലേ?
Yes.
60,000 by 1,80,000 into how much is that?
33.33.
33.33 is the new PV ratio. Are you getting the point why that PV ratio changed? Because in the second case they are telling that selling price is reduced by 10%. Selling price കുറയുമ്പോൾ സ്വാഭാവികമായിട്ടും കോൺട്രിബ്യൂഷനിൽ ചേഞ്ച് വരും. കോൺട്രിബ്യൂഷനിൽ ചേഞ്ച് വരുമ്പോൾ സ്വാഭാവികമായിട്ടും പി വി റേഷ്യോയിലും ചേഞ്ച് വരും. യെസ്. Now we are going to find out the BEP. How?
Total fixed cost by
How
PV
much?
ratio. 30,000 by
30,000 by 33.33%. I hope all are doing. How much?
90,009.
Yeah, round that figure. 90,000 alle? 90,000. So second case also it is done. Now we are moving to the third case. What is that third case they are asking?
Variable cost increased by 10%.
Variable cost is increased by 10%. Variable cost to change ആവുമ്പോൾ contribution change ആവുമോ ഇല്ലയോ?
Yes.
Obviously yes, right? What is that contribution? Sales minus variable cost. Sales change ആയാലും contribution മാറും. Variable cost change ആയാലും contribution മാറും. Contribution മാറിയാൽ what happens?
PV ratio.
PV ratio also changes. So let us see how it affects. In this case, what is the contribution? Third case. Variable cost ആണ് 10% കൂടുന്നത്. Selling price no change. So contribution is sales minus variable cost. Sales is same only 2 lakh. Variable cost is increasing by 10%. What is the 10% of variable cost? 12,000, right?
Yes.
So you have to add that with the present variable cost. So it will become, variable cost will become
1,32,000.
1,32,000 divided by PV ratio. Contribution by sales. What is the sales volume? 2,000 or 2 lakh
2 lakh.
into 100. 2 lakh minus 1,32,000. That will be the contribution. How much? ആണോ? 68,000? Hello?
Yes, sir.
68,000 divided by 2 lakh into 100.
2 lakh.
How much is that?
34%.
34%. Now BEP can be easily found out. Tell me.
Total fixed cost 30,000.
എത്രയാ?
88,000.
Eh?
88.
88,235, right?
അല്ല റൗണ്ട് ചെയ്ത
അത്ര അങ്ങോട്ട് റൗണ്ട് ചെയ്യണ്ട. പൈസ എന്തെങ്കിലും ഉണ്ട് ചില്ലറ റൗണ്ട് ചെയ്താൽ മതി.
88,235.
34,000 ഉറുപ്പ്യ സാലറി റൗണ്ട് ആക്കി 30,000 ഉറുപ്പ്യ കൊടുത്ത പോലെ നിങ്ങൾ പറയുന്നത്. യെസ്. ആൻഡ് ലാസ്റ്റ് വൺ, ദ ഫോർത്ത് കേസ്. വാട്ട് ഇസ് ദാറ്റ് ഫോർത്ത് കേസ് ടോക്കിംഗ് അബൌട്ട്?
Fixed cost increased by 10%.
Break even point if fixed cost increased by 10%. So ഇവിടെ നമ്മൾ ഡയറക്റ്റ് ബ്രേക്ക് ഈവൻ പോയിന്റ് കാണാം. വാട്ട് ഇസ് ദ റീസൺ?
Because PV ratio will be not affected by the fixed cost.
Yes. In the second and third case, what happens is that selling price ഉം variable cost ഉം ആണ് change ചെയ്യുന്നത്. So if that changes, PV ratio will change. But in the fourth case, only fixed cost is being changed. So selling price and variable cost, no change. So that this one will be applicable. So the PV ratio will remain as 40%, right?
Yes.
So what is the break-even point? Fixed cost divided by PV ratio. In this case, fixed cost is increasing by 10%. So 30,000 into 10%, how much?
3,000.
3,000. So it is increasing. How much?
33,000.
33,000 divided by, what is the PV ratio?
40%.
40%. How much?
82,500.
82,500. So let me tell you, after computing all these 4 break-even points, which is better for the company? Situation 1, 2, 3 or 4? Break-even point is a point where no profit and no loss. Break-even point കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് മുകളിലേക്ക് പോകുമ്പോൾ പെട്ടെന്ന് profit. So which is better? Which is better?
First case.
First case. How many of you support first case? How many of you support second case?
First case.
Any one of you support a second case? Yes or no? എന്തെങ്കിലും ഒന്ന് പറഞ്ഞൂടെ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് വായ തുറന്നിട്ട്? ഒന്നുമില്ലെങ്കിലും 10 ദിവസം അവധിക്ക് പോവല്ലേ? Anyways, the first case. What is the reason?
ബിക്കോസ് അതാണ് കുറച്ച് പൈസ ഉള്ളൂ. അപ്പൊ അത് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് എന്താണെങ്കിലും പ്രോഫിറ്റ് ആയിരിക്കും.
ഫസ്റ്റ് കേസ് എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ വേരിയബിൾ കോസ്റ്റ് 1,20,000 ഫിക്സഡ് കോസ്റ്റ് 30,000 നിൽക്കുമ്പോൾ യു ആർ ആക്ച്വലി ഏർണിംഗ് 75,000 ആസ് യുവർ BEP. ഇപ്പൊ 75 അല്ലേ ഏറ്റവും കുറവ്. പെട്ടെന്ന് പ്രോഫിറ്റ് 75 76 ആവുന്നതാണോ, 90 91 ആവുന്നതാണോ, 88 89 ആവുന്നതാണോ, 82 83 പോകുന്നതാണോ ഏറ്റവും പെട്ടെന്ന് പ്രോഫിറ്റ് കിട്ടാൻ തുടങ്ങുക? വിച്ച് കേസ്?
75 to
75 76 ആവുമ്പോഴല്ലേ? ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് ദ ഫാസ്റ്റസ്റ്റ് റൂട്ട് ടു റീച്ച് പ്രോഫിറ്റ്, റൈറ്റ്?
Yes.
So the first combination is the best suited for this company. The sales shall be 2 lakh, variable cost shall be 1,20,000, fixed cost shall be 30,000. This scenario is better to the company. Fine.
Yes, sir.
Shall we move?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
This is one of the use of PV ratio. We have found out, right? PV ratio is used to find out the margin of break even point and margin of safety. What is the another benefit of PV ratio? PV ratio enables us to compute the profit when some levels of sales are given. Certain level of sale തന്നിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ PV ratio ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ we can find out the profit, as well as we can also find out the value of sales needed to get some profit. ഒരു 50,000 രൂപേന്റെ പ്രോഫിറ്റ് കിട്ടണമെങ്കിൽ എത്ര സെയിൽസ് നടത്തണം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ 1,00,000 രൂപേന്റെ സെയിൽസ് നടത്തുമ്പോൾ വാട്ട് ഇസ് ദ പ്രോഫിറ്റ് ഫോർ ദ കമ്പനി? ഫോർ ഓൾ ദീസ് പർപ്പസ് PV ratio will be used. Now come to this case. What is the end figure? What should you find out?
Profit.
You can find out profit. What are the data given? Fixed cost, selling price, and variable cost. So from this, you need to find out what is the profit if the company is earning. Company has been generating 60,000 sales and 1 lakh rupee sale. 60,000 1,00,000 രൂപയുടെ sales നടക്കുമ്പോൾ what is the level of profit? So how can you find out? What is that tool? Anyways, we have to find out this fellow. What is that?
PV ratio.
PV ratio.
Yes, tell me how using this data, how can you find out PV ratio? PV ratio. What is the formula?
Contribution by
Sales into
100.
100. What is the contribution?
Sales minus variable cost.
12 minus 9 divided by 12 into
12.
100. 3 by 12 into 100. How much is that PV ratio?
25%.
This is the first problem that we have done. 25%. So if a question comes like this, find out the PV ratio and keep it over there. 25% PV ratio. Okay. What is the formula for profit?
Sales minus variable cost minus
Sales minus variable cost minus
fixed cost.
fixed cost. So if you are cut shorting this formula, how do you can find out?
Contribution minus fixed cost.
Contribution minus
Fixed cost.
fixed cost. ഈ ഒരു ക്വസ്റ്റ്യനില് ഫിക്സഡ് കോസ്റ്റ് ഉണ്ട്, പ്രോഫിറ്റ് കാണണം, കോൺട്രിബ്യൂഷനും തന്നിട്ടില്ല. ബട്ട് വാട്ട് വി ഹാവ് ഫൗണ്ട് ഔട്ട് ആസ് ഓഫ് നൗ?
PV ratio.
PV ratio we have found out. So using PV ratio, what can we find? What can be found out?
Break even.
Breakeven ഒന്നുമല്ല. Breakeven ആവശ്യം വരുന്നില്ല ഇവിടെ. We are actually finding out the profit. We have found out the PV ratio, and you also know that in order to find the profit, you can use this formula. Profit equals contribution minus fixed cost. Contribution അറിയോ നിങ്ങൾക്ക്?
Contribution sales into PV ratio.
Exactly. For example, after finding this PV ratio, what you have to do? What is the first case? What is the profit if sales are rupees 60,000? ഈ ഒരു പ്രോഫിറ്റ് ഡയറക്ട്ലി കാണുമ്പോൾ how you can find out? First of all, you have to find out contribution. In this case, how to find out contribution?
Sales into PV ratio.
Sales into PV ratio. What is the sale value?
60,000.
60,000 സെയിൽ നടക്കുമ്പോൾ എത്രയാണ് കോൺട്രിബ്യൂഷൻ? ഇൻറ്റു PV ratio 25%. What is the contribution?
15,000.
15,000. So we have found out contribution. So use this formula. Now we have contribution as well as
Fixed cost.
fixed cost. So move to find out profit. That is contribution minus fixed cost. In this case, contribution is 15,000 less
Fixed cost. 12,000.
12,000. What is the profit?
3,000.
3,000. Now the second case, profit if sales is rupees 10 lakh. I mean 1 lakh. Same procedure you can repeat.
1 lakh
Contribution
into
is sales into PV ratio. Sales is 1 lakh. What is the PV ratio? 25%. What is the contribution if profit is, I mean, sales is 1 lakh?
25,000.
25,000. Now you can find out profit. How? Contribution minus
Fixed
fixed
cost.
cost. Contribution how much? 25,000
1,000.
minus
12,000.
12,000.
13,000.
13,000. So with the help of PV ratio only, we have found out the profit at given level of sales. So this is one of the benefit of PV ratio. And we can do otherwise computation also. If the sales, if the profit is given, you can find out sales also. That we'll be discussing. Anyways, I think you are in the mood of Christmas. We'll discuss this once again in the next class. Is that possible?
Yes, sir.
എനിക്കറിയില്ല why you are so, maybe due to Christmas.